Oh, Juno, our favorite anxious little space ranger. How you've gone from absolutely dominating the professional scene to being compared to a throat pick. Nerf after nerf after nerf has absolutely shredded this fun, popular character into nothing more than a skin cash cow. That is, in the main game. So the intro might have been a little bit dramatic, but it is true that Juno's fallen very far from grace since her initial launch. With almost every patch note being a nerf, she's lost a lot of her identity unfortunately, and struggles a lot into most modern compositions. However, this doesn't mean she's entirely useless for us Juno fans. The Stadium game mode has shaken up the game of Overwatch a lot, reaching incredible player counts and throwing some much needed variety into the gameplay loop that was admittedly getting a little stale. And throughout its current lifespan, there's been one character who's consistently been very good. Juno. Now, Juno's undergone a lot of changes in Stadium, just like she did in the main game due to her strength in this mode. There was initially the Pulsar build that could blow people up before they realized what was even hitting them. Then there was the Flying Tracer build, where you'd fly into the air and shoot things forever, which I'm still to believe is why they nerfed the movement in the base game, by the way. And admittedly, I haven't been keeping up with her mainstream build since then, but that's because I discovered my own build that I'll share with you today, which helped me climb to All-Star in back-to-back seasons to get those sweet, sweet skins. Let's get started. So my absolute favorite build for Juno for Stadium isn't quite a Pulsar build, and it's definitely not an Infinite Flight build or even weapon power, but rather revolving around her Hyper Rings. Her Hyper Rings are a very underutilized part of her kit by a lot of players, especially in the lower ranks in the main game, but especially in Stadium where it could genuinely be the difference between your team winning and losing any sort of interaction because of how fast Stadium fights can go due to the fast game modes, fast kills, etc. And I wish it showed like a win rate or something using like at least most things from a certain build. It's kind of like something you can't really tell other than like estimation, but I think genuinely I have at least a 75% plus win rate using this build alone, or at least similar variations. And it all starts with the Pulsar Plus power. I know I said this is a Hyper Ring build, but genuinely Pulsar Plus is the best power for Juno no matter what build you're going for, and should always be the one that you start with. And it's not just because Pulsars are such an insane ability that can end up scaling incredibly well the further you go on in a Stadium match, but mostly because this is perfect for getting more Stadium cash. Sure, you get more cash from actually finishing kills, which Pulsars are good at, but you also get cash just from healing and damaging, and by potentially hitting 9 different people with a Pulsar, you can get a lot of cash very fast. It's really common to get MVP as Juno utilizing the Pulsar builds, but especially just by having Pulsar Plus, no matter what build you go for, you'll be getting a lot of money, which is very crucial because, as you can see, we have a lot of fairly expensive things to go for. When starting off basically any game as Juno, I don't know how this compares to other characters, but as Juno especially, I did get this from Aspen. You want to start with the Compensator for 5% weapon power, the Power Playbook for 10% ability power, which will probably stay longer than the other ones, as well as the Armored Vest I like to go for the 25 armor. These are just all really generic and can be built with the 3500 that you initially get. Weapon power is good not just for damage, but also for healing. A lot of people forget about that. Of course, ability power is going to be the main thing that we go for. By the end of this, you should have 100% or more ability power depending on what round it is. If it's like round 7, you can get 105% ability power, I think like it caps out at, which is crazy. And then the Armored Vest is just very good at your survivability. You want to go for a lot of big Pulsars in the very first round typically in order to get a lot of that extra cash, and you can get very easily plucked out of the sky by a Cassidy, Soldier, Ashe, etc. So the armor is just really nice to have, also just good for flankers in the form of Genji. And this is going to be your starting build. You're going to start with the Pulsar Plus, and you're going to start with these 3 little green items. Now, typically by the end of round 1, it depends on what game mode it is. You know, things like Clash, you can get like 15,000 cash in like one go, but then a quick game of Push, and you might only get like 8,000, or like Control or something like that. So one of the things I usually like to start with bare minimum is Nano Cola. That 20% ability power on top of the 10% you already have off Power Playbook is going to be very nice for your Pulsars to get a little bit of extra damage. Again, that's more cash that does scale. And also it's going to probably stay towards the end of the build, unless you replace it with something like more like utility focused that gives you a really good ability for like 5% less power. And if you only have like 8,000 or something, you can just kind of go for whatever. I like to go for these Shady Spectacles for the ability Lifesteal and the Weapon Grease for the attack speed. Again, this helps not just for damage, but also for healing and keeping your team up. However, if you do manage to get 10,000 at the end of a round, you can easily just replace these with the Lux Loop. I don't always go for the Lux Loop, however, it is a pretty solid option. It is just 10% ability power, which is of course going to be nice, but also the 25% Hyper Ring duration is pretty nice, because I think it lasts for like, what, 5 seconds or something, or 4 seconds, so it lasts like a whole extra second, which is nice. And this is really good because one of the big problems, I'll probably go more in depth on like pros and cons towards the end of the video, but one of the big cons about the Hyper Ring build is that it's very reliant on your team actually utilizing your hyper rings. One of the biggest annoyances when playing Juno, but especially in Stadium because of how important it is your teammates being like an inch away from your rings and you're like spam pinging it like, hey, touch my ring. Literally just touch it for half a second and you get a boost. And they're just like, nope, I'm going to sit here, I'm going to hold my Reinhardt shield, and I'm going to die. So this gives them a little bit more time to actually be like, hey, that's a hyper ring, I should probably touch that. And plus, this doesn't affect like the cooldown or anything, so that's just basically less downtime between your rings being up. So you can kind of consider it like a cooldown reduction in a way. Hopefully by the end of round 3, you have at least some sort of access to 10,000 cash. And by round 3, that's when you're finally going to start scaling for your hyper rings. And you're going to start with the hyper healer ability. Unfortunately, it did get nerfed due to the flying tracer build that I mentioned in the intro. It used to give 100 over health at scaled, now it's only 75. So it maxes out, quote unquote maxes out, because you can technically get like 105 ability power, but it quote unquote maxes out at like 150 compared to 200, which is significantly worse than it was, but it is still very, very strong. Being able to just give like a flat burst of overhealth to your teammates is really big, and as you can see from the little quote over off to the side that I kept for myself, because I did share it online on Twitter like ages ago, it is very good for Cyber Venom and for anti-effects, and that is one of the biggest reasons why I started going for this build. I noticed, wow, I am getting absolutely shredded by these Cyber Venom Moiras, the occasional Ana, but mostly it was like Cyber Venom Moira, Cyber Venom Juno, I think like Cyber Venom Ashe with the Dynamite. Just a lot of Cyber Venom was like everywhere, and that is one of the most frustrating abilities to go against in Stadium, because without the ability to like burst heal your teammates with things like, I don't know, like Onanade, you know, medicinal missiles, I guess if you have a bunch of weapon power, right? If you don't go for that, it's very hard to burst heal your teammates through that or keep them alive, especially if your Ryan's shield's getting broken or like your tank doesn't have a lot of armor, maybe it's building like Junker Queen or something. So being able to give them overhealth that isn't affected by that is very, very big. So that's why I started going for the Hyper Ring build in the first place, was just spam through the Cyber Venom, because usually like 150 overhealth is like usually enough to keep your team up, and also that speed boost is very good to help your team kite away. This build is even better if you're playing in a group, because you can actually communicate more, like, hey, kite this, use my hyper ring, get that health, go around the corner, and then boom, you can go right back through by going through the ring again. Very, very strong. Going through the ring again, I mean like mostly for like the speed boost. I don't mean for the health. It does not work twice. But one thing I do want to mention is that this will trigger on yourself even if you just use the hyper ring. You don't actually have to touch the hyper ring, but just like with the speed boost for hyper ring, all you have to do is press the button and boom, that's an instant 75 overhealth that scales with your ability power for you, which I mean at this point, 40% ability power, that's going to be like over 100 overhealth, which is really nice. And you can use this for a lot of survivability. Again, that's why it was nerfed, because it was nerfed for the Flying Tracer survivability. But it is very solid at just getting yourself out of a bad situation, especially because we're getting a lot more dive characters in the game here soon. We already have Genji, but we're also getting Winston, which is going to be very crucial to run from, because I'm very scared of like a weapon power Winston that just like shreds you in an instant. And again, by the end of round 3, hopefully you have 10,000 cash lying around, so that is going to give you the Pulsar Destroyers. Again, this is more of a ability power, hyper ring focused build, but because you're already going for ability power, there is zero reason to not also buff your Pulsars, and Pulsar Destroyers is insane, and I swear this used to give 10% lifesteal as well. I tried looking in the patch notes to see when they removed that, but I couldn't find it, but I swear this also used to give 10% ability lifesteal, but I don't know, maybe I'm just thinking of like something else. 20 damage that scales with your ability power is really big. It maxes out at 40 if you hit the 100% ability power, which is pretty nice. You can easily 2-tap squishies that don't go for like a tank build, you know, like I know Mercies and Annas, a lot of them like to go for tank builds, but this is going to be very, very big for any squishies that don't go for survivability. You can just boom, 2-tap them by round 7. It is crazy. And one thing I do want to note is that while you can get the Mercy rule pretty easily with this build if your team is playing really solid, I want to say this build actually does scale very, very well going into round 7 or just high rounds in general, because you're going to get more ability power, that's going to be more overhealth, more damage for your pulsars. I think Juno in general just scales very well because you can get a lot of burst value in the early game, but you can get even more scalability. And I think Pulsar Destroyers just helps that out a lot. As you go on, of course, you will be cutting out these little green abilities. You might keep the power playbook for a little bit. You might even keep the armor for a little bit. But towards the late game, you want to start climbing for some more of these purples. And you can get, honestly, any of these in any order. I actually usually like to save the Champions Kit, unless it's like, I guess, a very big anti-team, like if they're going like Junker Queen, Ana, Cyber Venom, Moira, something like that. Then Champions Kit isn't as bad because you can go for extra overhealth on your Hyper Rings, which is more crucial. But I think I like to go for Catalytic Crystal a lot. This is 15% ability power, which isn't that like crazy, but it's better than like 10%, right? But I like the little text that it gives you, the little ability that it gives. And I actually didn't even discover this for like a while, but Catalytic Crystal is really good for Juno because it says ability damage and healing grants 20% more ult charge. One of the biggest problems with Juno, and I actually noticed this in Stadium especially because of how fast Stadium rounds go, is that you build Orbital Ray so slowly. I think it is one of the slowest charging ults in the game, like in general now. I think it was around the par with Sound Barrier, but now Sound Barrier got increased too, which is, I'm sorry, Lucio players. But one of the biggest problems is building that Orbital Ray, and there's some rounds in Stadium I get like 80% to Orbital Ray max. Like either, you know, maybe I died a couple of times, or the round just went so fast, I don't even get a chance to build my ultimate. Catalytic Crystal will help you build that ultimate very, very quickly. Not like, you know, Pulsar levels of speed, but it's going to be crazy fast compared to what it was before, because 20% more ult charge is nothing to scoff at. Like, you know, if you were to build like 5% ult charge off of one hit, that's now 6%, which scales up very, very well when you're using your Pulsars on a bunch of squishies, including your own teammates. Like, that is going to be a lot of ult charge. You want to also start going for things like the Iridescent Iris. This is very good because it gives you cooldown reduction, which affects all of your cooldowns, and Juno's cooldowns are very, very strong. Gives you a faster glide boost cooldown by like 1 second or something like that. And the same goes for, you know, Hyper Ring, which are already going to go for cooldown reduction on Hyper Ring anyway, and more importantly, Pulsar Torpedoes. And then the Champions Kit, as I mentioned, this is going to round out to 100% ability power, and a build looking typically like this, usually replacing Lux Loop maybe with something else, is usually what you're going to end off on when it comes to playing Juno in Stadium for this build. And most importantly, I forgot to mention, for the powers, as you scale on round 5, if you do make it to that round 5, you're going to go ahead and go for that Rally Ring. This is going to again shift the focus even more to your Hyper Rings by giving you a 1%, or sorry, not 1%, god, that would be horrible, a 1 second cooldown reduction every time an ally passes through Hyper Ring. Again, this also happens when you press E initially, so bare minimum, this is a 1 second cooldown reduction, which scales with the Iridescent Iris. That's 2 seconds, I believe. But this is huge when you use it in the spawn doors, because you can use it like at the 1 second mark instead of the 3 second mark, get it back immediately. I like this for places like Chateau Lacroix or whatever, where it has that really annoying choke point that's really good for like Moira Orbs, Fire Strikes, whatever, because you can just spam this like 3 times before you even start a fight, and that's going to help you get a lot of immediate pressure, especially because there's so many brawl tanks in Stadium. I think that's one of the other reasons why Juno's so good in Stadium, because it's mostly brawl focused. But this is going to be very, very good if they're spamming Moira Orbs, because you're going to reduce the cooldown of your stuff. Very good for, you know, anti-nades. You're going to almost always have your Hyper Ring cooldown faster than they're going to have their Cyber Venom or anti cooldown or any other cooldown that might be scary. Very good for like Junker Queen ult and stuff like that too. So I really, really like having Rally Ring. And you might notice that the 4th power slot is completely blank, and that's because technically, quote unquote, you don't want to have to get to round 7 anyway, but technically you can honestly go for almost anything you want. So I wouldn't recommend either the Orbital Ray ones. The Orbital Ray ones are terrible. I mean, you're never going to focus on Orbital Ray if there's not even like a guarantee you're going to build it, unless you hard focus on Orbital Ray, and then that's just relying on your teammates to actually use it. Torpedo Glide isn't very good anymore. I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, I just haven't seen talk much about her build in Stadium utilizing this anymore. This used to be absolutely broken. Oh, sorry, it was Blink Boost, sorry. Blink Boost. Torpedo Glide I actually like. I actually do really like Torpedo Glide. So every 50 damage you deal reduces the cooldown of pulsars by 1 second. If you feel like you need to focus more on the Torpedo build towards the end, you can easily go for Torpedo Glide. I really, really like this one. Metamaster, I think, got buffed from like 1.25 to 1.5 scaling, which is a little better because it crits your teammates as well. I still don't like it very much. Stinger isn't that bad, but I think a lot of people, again, like with these ones, I think they think it deals like 100 extra damage at the end. No, with 100% ability power, you're dealing 20 extra damage, and I mean that does scale with like each shot, which is kind of crazy, you know, but it's better if you go for like more weapon power as well to go along with it. This is almost not almost, it's like is exclusively ability power, so it's not like the most insane, but it might be very good when you're trying to defend yourself against like a Winston, Genji, stuff like that. Cosmic Coolant isn't really worth it anymore because it got nerfed down to half a second. Medicinal Missiles I don't think is worth it. I used to use this almost guaranteed as my 4th slot every time, but now that it doesn't have that burst healing, I don't really like it as much anymore. My favorite one to go for by far, again, because of how brawl focused Stadium is at the moment, is Black Hole. Black Hole reduces the movement speed of enemies who pass through it by 35% for 2 seconds, and I think this does work with the initial projectile as well, like how technically your team gets 2 speed boosts by getting the initial projectile going through them, and then by actually touching the ring. So I think you can technically make it 4 seconds if you hit them with the projectile as well. And so being able to do that, especially when you have a brawl tank such as Reinhardt, Junker Queen, Orisa, Orisa has like no fall-offs, she kind of can keep distance, but any tank that wants to close that distance, or even like a Sigma that wants to like get distance away, is very, very good. I love Black Hole a lot. That does mean you have to play a little bit closer and a little bit more aggressive, but by the end, you can use so much burst value from your torpedoes that you can easily do that without very much risk. So I really like Black Hole. That is the one I would recommend going for, but again, I think Torpedo Glide is also pretty good, and Stinger is probably going to scale better the more tanks or more dive characters that we get, or even like bigger tanks you can shoot easily in the Stadium game mode. Finally, to wrap it up before the gameplay, I know I've been yapping a lot, I do apologize. Before we get to the gameplay, a few flex things that I want to mention. Reinforced Titanium, I usually replace the armor perk with this, or not perk, but like item, after a little bit, because Reinforced Titanium is very good in a meta where you see a lot of Helix Rocket soldiers, and most importantly, a lot of Dynamite Ashes. Like, Ashe suddenly went from like the worst DPS other than Genji in Stadium to being like very high up there, and Ashe is already a problem for you as Juno, because you want to go for those, you know, really big Pulsar plays, you want to go like super high in the skybox and like Pulsar the whole team, and Ashe, or like Cassidy as well, but like mostly Ashe, can easily pluck you out of the sky if you're trying to do that. And while this doesn't help very much with like her actual gun, this is very good for Dynamite, and Dynamite's very scary because Dynamite with an ability power build can literally one-tap you. Like, if she shoots it in the air or like on the ground or whatever, and like it splits into the triple Dynamite or whatever, that's going to one-tap you. But Reinforced Titanium will actually prevent that, because not only is it giving you just a little bit of extra health in general, but it also says while you have shields, take 15% reduced ability damage, which is really crazy, because like say it would do 100 damage, right? Now it's doing 85 damage, which doesn't seem like a lot, but because if it's like an overtime ability, again, like I said, like that, it is very good, and especially because health does scale over each round in Stadium. So you're going to be taking a lot less damage, and this is also, again, good for other abilities such as Soldier's Rocket build, which is getting more popular. Hold on a sec, let me look at like the other characters, right? Very good against, you know, like Diva Lava or whatever. Junker Queen axes and knives are very, very crucial. Orisa Javelin, Rhine Fire Strike, Sigma Rock. I think like the Zarya, like mini grabs and stuff like that. May Cryoblast. Like, my point being that it works against a lot of stuff, and it scales really, really well, especially the more characters we're going to be getting that are probably going to have abilities that are really strong. I don't always keep this one until the very end, unless, like I said, there is like an Ashe or something, but typically if we get to round 7, I just replace this with like one of the crucial ones here to get that ability power, because by then you're just going to be playing very aggressive, and it's not as important, but throughout the rounds, this will help you live a lot longer, which is really important, because playing Juno, you want to play for your life a lot, especially for Orbital Ray. Cyber Venom, I know I've been yapping about it, like, all video being, like, super annoying, but if you can't beat them, join them, like, genuinely. I usually only go Cyber Venom if I'm playing against a character such as Junker Queen that wants to have a lot of that self-sustain, or if I notice they're on characters that don't have, like, a lot of super intense healing, which, I mean, come to think of it, that's mostly just Zenyatta. Very good for countering Transcendence, by the way, especially the spam Transcendence builds, but if they have, like, not super crazy healing or something, Cyber Venom can be really good. Even if you're playing against, like, a Juno player that isn't playing, like, the Hyper Ring build or playing to, like, keep their team up, just playing, like, super aggressive, Cyber Venom's also very helpful for that. Solar Shielding. This one also helps you get up to that 105 if you replace something such as your, like your Lux Loop, right? You can easily replace this with the Solar Shielding, get you to that 105. This says, allies affected by Hyper Ring restore 25 shields every 1 second, so you can use this to keep yourself up if you're getting targeted a lot, which, again, I think this is going to be very good with things like Winston coming more into the game. I think this is a very, very strong ability, but I really love using this one when I'm playing with a Sigma or a Zarya specifically, because those characters have shields natively, and their shields are going to scale throughout the throughout the rounds of Stadium. So this is basically just even more healing for your tanks, essentially, mostly. I don't think there's, like, other than like a Zen, there's very much that, like, other characters that utilize shields currently in the game, but Zarya and Sigma, very, very nice, and again, this helps even more with the Cyber Venom and anti-effects that you're trying to counter in the first place. And finally, this is another one that I like because of how brawl-focused Stadium is Liquid Nitrogen. If you don't want to go for Black Hole, you can just go for Liquid Nitrogen instead. This says that dealing ability damage slows the target's move speed by 20% for 3 seconds. Very good into Reinhardt, Junker Queen, again, any tank that wants to close that gap. Very good into Sigma to prevent them from gaining distance. Just very solid overall. And again, this is really good if you can't get Black Hole, or if you wanted to go for something else. Things like, you know, the Torpedo Glide, or the Stinger, or whatever. You can also technically stack them and do, like, major movement speed reduction. That's like 55% speed reduction. They are not escaping your team. Very good if you're playing a very aggressive, push-oriented team. And yeah, that's basically the build. This is very, very ability power focused. Again, lots of ability power. You can, like, not one-tap people, that's just one-tapping, like, the bots and stuff. You can easily two-tap a bunch of squishies. You get a bunch of overhealth just from utilizing your Hyper Rings, and you can, like, keep them out longer with the Lux Loop, and you can basically just keep your teammates alive, very guaranteed. And everything scales very, very well for the ability power with your Pulsar Torpedoes. Your Pulsars are going to be a crazy awesome tool to utilize. So yeah, I've been yapping enough. That was like, oh my god, 20 minutes on top of the intro. I am very sorry about that. I'll probably try to cut down as much as I can. But without further ado, I want to go ahead and get into some games. At least one. I maybe want to show maybe like 2 or something like that. And that'll go ahead and wrap up the video. Without further ado, I'll see you in the games.
It's a fierce competition. Who will cave to the pressure and who will come out on top? Three, two, one. Capture the objective.
Does this help?
The objective unlocks in 10 seconds.
Bullseye's out!
seen so much action, and there's still more to come. Three, two, one. Capture the objective.
Let's kick this off. Enemy over here.
The objective comes live in 10.
Thank you for assisting.
The objective's online.
And I gotta tell you, it was perfect. Perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.
Enemy here. Thank you. Maximum velocity. Let the Kitsune guide you. Welcome to orbit.
Overtime. The round is in the bag. Let's check the standings. 3, 2-0. Quite the performance from these superstars. The teams are gearing up. Every choice is crucial. Three, two, one. Commencing attack on objective B. The objective 3. Some intense competition this round. What tactics will the teams come up with this round? Capture the objective. The objective goes live in 10.
And that's gonna do it for my stadium guide for Juno, just before Season 18. Now, this video ended up way longer than I thought it was going to be, or I hoped it was going to be, but I really didn't want to cut very much out, except for like the stuff where absolutely nothing was happening, because it wouldn't be as much of a guide if I just cut out a bunch of like the gameplay parts, because it's not just about, hey, here's a build, go copy it and do whatever. And I'm not like the best player in the world, you know, I'm like peaked Diamond 3, but I am a very experienced Juno player, and so I do want to show off how I play Juno, especially when it comes to this build. This is my first time doing a video like this, especially one of like this extent. There was a lot of editing that went into this, and it would have honestly been probably higher quality as well, because I needed to get it up before drives, and the game was down for a few hours when I needed footage, and yada yada. I also procrastinated a little bit. Push comes to shove, I did manage to get it up at the time that I wanted to, but if you want to see more videos like this, please be sure to let me know down in the comments, and also be sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe, because I'm going to try to pump out a lot of content. I am so hooked on Overwatch, and I just really want to share my love and passion for the game, as well as my gameplay. But with that being said, thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. This is Salem, signing off.